Welcome to Straight Talk with Kentucky Senator Gerald Neal. I have a very special guest today, the United States Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. We will discuss a wide range of issues, including the protests against racism, police and brutality, and the congressional response to COVID-19, as well as what's going on in our streets, and also the legislation that is designed to help states recoup from the expenditures of funds to fight the scourge of COVID-19. So there are challenges out here that I haven't even laid out here, but we have U.S. Senator Cory Booker to help us with understanding these things. Welcome, U.S. Senator Cory Booker.
Senator Neal, I am honored to be here with you, grateful for your leadership, and frankly, you are one of those light workers in dark times that give a lot of strength and encouragement. So your invitation here is great. At the end of a long week, I am grateful, sir, to be on.
Well, I got to say, you inspire me, and I'm delighted to have you as a guest. Let's get right into it. We want to use this time as best we can. Let's jump right into it. Give a little bit on your background so the listening audience knows who Cory Booker is.
Sure. I'm born to two, civil rights activist parents, graduate from North Carolina Central University and Fisk University. And they met and married in Washington, D.C. My dad was lucky and fortunate to meet my mom. My mom was generous and merciful to marry my dad.
I understand.
And I was born in D.C., but my parents quickly moved up to New Jersey. My dad had gotten a job as IBM's first black salesman in the entire Virginia area in the 60s. And he did so well, he got a promotion to Manhattan, and we lived in New Jersey. And
Yeah.
we fought a court case, a big legal battle rather, to be the first black family to move into this town. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was president of my high school class, all-American high school football player, and on my way to Stanford University, and played football out there, got my master's there, studied overseas on a Rhodes Scholarship, came back to Yale Law School, and that's when I decided I knew what I wanted to do with my life, which was move here to Newark, New Jersey. I still live in the same neighborhood I moved into 20 plus years ago. It's a neighborhood where, and you know this, Senator, we don't mistake wealth with worth. It is a so-called low-income neighborhood, but it is a place of extraordinary history and people, and it's the center of the struggle in many ways for not just my city, but really my country. And can we make the promises real for everybody? So I've been in local elected office. I was the city councilman of this neighborhood. I was the mayor of this city, and then in 2013 became New Jersey's first and America's fourth popularly elected African American to the Senate. And I've been blessed to serve there for the last 6+ years.
I think you just laid the foundation for why you're in the public service.
I look at men like you, who are my peers or my older brother, so to speak, and you all laid the foundation, sir. Honestly, I feel you can't help but being a black man walking into the United States Senate and not recognize that people sweat and bled and fought and died so that you can be there. And I got to give Chuck Schumer some credit, because I got to the Senate and there weren't that many people of color working there. It's one thing to be elected, but when you don't see any black staffers or diversity on the major committees. And I went to him with another great senator, Brian Schatz, and we just said, can you change the rules for Democratic senators and force them to have to publish the data on how many, what the diversity of their staffs look like? So you know this, and we're going to talk about this perhaps with policing. As soon as you let the sunshine in on what's really going on, behavior changes. So suddenly the numbers of minorities and women, frankly, hired in key positions has been changing and going up. So I feel like you know this too, because you've been the first of many things in your journey, first African-American, this or that. And the job is not to be the first, it's to not be the last, to make sure you're opening the door so that, and by the way, diversity is not just something that's nice or nice for black people. We know this from Harvard Business School studies. Diverse teams are better teams. We are a better America when we are more inclusive of all the talent, richness, and different lived experiences that is America. That's our advantage over more homogeneous countries. as it being a diverse one of ethnicity, religion, race, and more. So I know you feel this sometimes, where you just feel like you're so blessed. You're your ancestors' wildest dreams, and you want to every day prove worthy of that.
Wow, that's a home run. You brought it home. Well, let's jump right into it.
All
What do
right.
you view as the overall challenges of this nation and the world?
Look, I'm going to say it in a way that you might not expect, but I think that one of the most fundamental ideals of human spirituality is love. Love thy neighbor. It represents in every single faith that there is this idea of loving the other, and we need to create a society that's a reflection of that. Martin Luther King called it the beloved country, a beloved community, and we are in America are in struggle to achieve that. We put forth these profound ideals. We're the oldest constitutional democracy. And we said this nation is going to be found not by who you're born to or how much wealth you have. All are going to be created equal. These are going to be spiritual ideals bigger than even the imperfect geniuses that founded it. And so here we find ourselves in 2020 on a planet where we are not manifesting that level of love within the policies that we have. But we are beginning to see that by not doing that, it hurts us all. So let's just use the issue of the day. By a country that treats people with mental illness, by treating them with police, prisons, and jails, that is not only hurting those people who are not getting the health care they need, but they're costing all of us in terms of the tax. It's more expensive with taxpayer dollars. In fact, Seattle did this study. What's more expensive? People with mental illnesses homeless on the street or in supportive housing, which, as you know, Senator, is expensive to build and maintain. But they found out that they save more money in supportive housing because people end up engaging with the police in jails and hospital emergency rooms. And so we're in this, the bigger issues to me are the crisis, the poverty of empathy and love that we've got to start getting to understand what's in our best interest. Education is so much of a better way to go. It's not only the right love policy, but it's also ignorance is so much more expensive than education. Access to health care, access to prenatal care. I mean, how could we be this great country, but lead all the industrial nations in infant mortality and maternal mortality? And that's a horror. That's a wretched reality, because the most valuable natural resource in America now is the genius of our children, because in a global knowledge-based society, the country that educates the best is the country that's going to lead. And we're now competing against groups like China. The top 10% of all their high school classes are more than all of our children.
Wow.
And so you know, we have to understand we are in a competition to nurture that greatest natural resource, and we're not doing a good job because we're defunding schools. We're not ensuring children and babies have clean water and clean air to drink. We're not ensuring that they have access to health care. All of these things, I think, is the challenge we have in America right now. And globally, I'm on the Foreign Relations Committee. It's stunning that we are a nation right now paying the cost. You know, when you don't invest in the sub-Saharan Africa area, something called the Sahel region, where you're seeing terrorism come in, because there's so much poverty and destitution. And some of the more powerful tools we have, by the time the American military has to get involved in counterterrorism, it's so much more expensive than the State Department getting in with helping people with access food and clean water and the kind of things that give stability and economic growth, as opposed to terrorism, which often thrives in areas of instability. And so this is what I think that domestically and nationally I'm working on to make sure our policies reflect our highest values.
Well, wow. In the context of which you have dealt with it, you really answered that question large. But we also know that there's something called racism that makes those that live within the reality that you just explained, the impact of it, there's a disparity in that.
Yes, sir.
So what do we do? I mean, let's go back this way. What is it that we do today in terms of overcoming that? What is it that our nation needs to do? What do we need to do here?
Well, racism is antithetical to love. It's an opposite pole to that. Is hate. Racism is hate, and it is this belief that someone else is inferior, inhuman, or not worthy of the equal dignity. And it is a self-inflicted wound. It's like one body having one hand stabbing the other, and doesn't think that that is somehow going to visit a sickness on the whole. And so the first thing we have to do is acknowledge it. We're a country that hasn't even been able to tell the truth about how racism permeates every area of our country.
We have the perfect leader for that.
Listen, I pray for that man because he needs some prayer. And so here's a man that at every stage of his career, we know him in New Jersey, that his housing business got in trouble for discrimination, that he was calling for the death of the Central Park Five who were exonerated, and even after they're exonerated, he's still calling for it. That launched his political career challenging the birth certificate of Barack Obama, which in itself had racial undertones. So, it's as King, who wrote in the letters to the Birmingham jail, he didn't write the letter. He said explicitly, this is not, don't get upset with the KKK and the White Citizens Council in the way that I get upset with white moderates who seem to be content with a false peace, which may just be the absence of tension, but not a true peace, which is the presence of justice.
Yeah.
And so his call was not to focus on the people that are overt spewing racism, but the people that have come adjusted to injustice. And just talk about being maladjusted. And so that's what I'm saying is we need to prick people's maladjustment, get them disturbed with the fact that we live in a nation where the number one indicator of whether you're drinking clean water, breathing clean air, or around a toxic site is race. In a society where black women will die 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. In a nation where there's no difference between drug use and drug dealing between blacks and whites, but African Americans are getting arrested about 4 times more. I could go through every aspect of our society, from education, healthcare, economics, justice, and you see how race plays a major role. And there's no way we can deal with it without first acknowledging it, expanding empathy, and then getting to action. And that's why I'm really excited about the moment we're in right now.
See, that's the great segue right now.
Yes,
the
yes.
protest today. Translate that into what you just said, because I sense something very different going on here. I was very much involved in the civil rights movement. Got arrested 11 times doing that. But now what I'm seeing out here is something quite different. It's more inclusive. I'm seeing people's faces I haven't seen before.
Yes, sir. And so that's the powerful thing. So first of all, your activism. There's never been major legislation passed in Washington. The Americans with Disability Act, labor laws, civil rights legislation that wasn't preceded by mass movements. So change doesn't come from Washington, it comes to Washington by people like you who are willing to be arrested 11 times for it. And so we're seeing this now. Suddenly we're seeing a mass, all 50 states, and as you said, an amazingly diverse coalition of activism, black and white and brown and older and younger, and you just see this incredible collage of humanity in America. And it is different. And if it sustains, mark my words, because I just wrote a bill on policing that wouldn't have been possible a month ago to get as many people on that bill as we have right now, is that the activists are changing the realm of what's possible and are poised. We're still in the foothills, we're not on the mountaintop, but are poised to lift this nation to a much higher level if they sustain these kind of protests for weeks and months more.
I want to get back to that bill specifically, but I want to stick a pin in what you just said, because we just passed what we call Breonna's Law.
I saw that
bill, and it lays out it puts a ban on no-knock warrants, which has a trail of blood historically in the United States of America, but also they also prescribe the guidelines of how any warrant is to be issued, and on top of that, they require body cameras, to record the facts that take place. I think that's amazing. But I got to put one more thing on there. Guess what happened today? And you probably don't know it. We've been struggling year after year protesting Jefferson Davis being in the rotunda of the capital of Kentucky. That's our symbolic center of government. It is the place of honor. And guess what happened today?
What happened?
Well, with our governor's comments, governor of this state, his comments that it should be removed at the beginning of the week. And then today, the commission that makes the decision on what happens to historical properties voted to bring it down. It's coming out of there. Think about it.
Praise God.
All of that could not happen if it wasn't for protest. Getting back to your statement, and that protest has generated the opportunity for you to do your bill. Tell us about that bill.
So it is a police accountability bill that is really three main areas, some of which you all have done also. It bans certain practices like chokeholds, racial and religious profiling. And for you all, it bans no-knock warrants on the federal level everywhere. It also says that we have to have that sunlight that gives transparency. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, by forcing reporting requirements of American policing, that you have to report your misconduct, your use of force, and a lot of other things that will allow local activists, local leaders to be able to measure what their departments are actually doing in these areas where there's been so much abuse in the past. And then the final thing, for those police officers that do wrong, not all the officers, but those that do egregious things, we now are creating an environment where they can be held accountable in federal courts, both on the civil side, getting rid of something called qualified immunity, and on the criminal side, by changing the standard from willful standard, which requires you to know the thinking of the person, to reckless disregard, which is an easier standard to reach, even though it's still a high standard.
Well, let me tell you something. You just said a few things there I think are just absolutely crucial. Requiring a police officer, someone accompanying someone doing wrong,
Yes.
to report that wrong is major.
Yes.
That's major.
Yes. You know, I used to say accountability is three things. It is having a clear standard, measures towards that standard, and consequences when those standards are failed to be met. So if in track, you look like you must have been an athlete in your day.
I doubt it.
You had to be, the standard, you had to be fast, but you can't just say that person looks fast. You got to actually measure it. So it's a stopwatch. And if they're not fast, get off the team. There's a consequence. Right. So with our policing, we got to have a standard of conduct. Yeah. We have to have ways of measuring those standards. So report to us when you use misuse of force or misconduct. And then consequences is when things do go wrong, that department or those individuals can be held accountable in the courts, in the federal courts, and not skirt away like we've seen so many times. Police officers, when we see with our own eyes that person did wrong, but yet they somehow get off because the standards on the federal level are too high.
So let me get this straight. What is the status of that bill?
So they're about to start hearings on it in the House of Representatives, and they'll vote on it within the next couple of weeks, I imagine, on the House side. In the Senate, we have a different problem. I don't know if you ever heard of this man named Mitch McConnell. I don't know if you know who that is.
I think I have.
Yes. Well, he
know him quite well, as a matter of fact.
I can only imagine. He controls the Senate. He is the power force in the Senate, and he traditionally has not led a lot of bipartisan bills that have wide bipartisan support in the House. He has literally called himself the Grim Reaper because he won't let those bills get a vote on the Senate floor. For example, we could have passed, the House and the Senate, just common sense gun safety, that if you're on the terrorist no-fly list, you got to have a background check. If you have been assaulted your wife, we should have background checks to stop you from buying guns. That's a widely supported, 80+% of NRA members agree we should have universal background checks, but he won't let that bill come to the Senate floor. So this is not one that I imagine he's going to let to the Senate floor. Now there may be some kind of compromise, so there's a lot of conversation going on, but right now this bill that will likely pass in the House may not get a floor. But remember, we only are 150 days out from the next election, and there's a lot of people on the ballot and a lot of tossed up elections. The Senate could easily shift another way, and if it does, you can be sure that Chuck Schumer would let that bill be voted on, and we could potentially be between now and January, especially if protests continue to mount, we could be very close to passing a landmark police accountability bill in America.
And you just made an argument as to why voting is important.
Listen, you were from the generation where people were dying to expand the access to the ballot. Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner, people were beaten. Edmund Pettus Bridge was a voting rights march. And for us as a larger community, as a country, to have voting at just like 50%, 60%, that's unfortunate. And this has got to be one of the highest voting turnouts elections. It must be, because everybody's saying it's the most important election of our lifetime. Well, if it is, you got to act like it. And we are at a crossroads in our country, from healthcare to the environment, to environmental justice, to having a tax code that actually makes it so that if you work a full-time job, you're not below the poverty line. These are all things that are on this ballot, including police accountability.
Well, I'm glad that I have a senator, and his name is Cory Booker.
Well, I am honored that you would even consider me not only your friend, but helping to represent your views in the United States Senate. And I just want you to know that I have a deep respect for you, for somebody in every generation of your life, from when you were a young kid getting arrested for the civil rights movement. I had your bio. I read even more stuff I didn't know. You are truly a man that is living a great life. And the beautiful thing is God ain't nearly finished with you yet. You've got a lot of laps around the track. So consider me a friend, an ally. I hope that this won't be the last time you'll let me come on your show.
Come on anytime you want to. We're
right.
going to make the whole show you. And you're so kind. I appreciate it so much. Why don't we stick a pin in it right now? I know you got a lot of things that you have to do. I know that you're very busy, but I do want to say this. I appreciate the fact that you took the time to share with our audience. I appreciate your service. And I can tell just by this exchange, and even before this exchange, we got a real warrior in the Senate. So I want to thank you, and we're going to do this again, okay?
Thank you, and God bless you, and everybody who listens to you. God bless you. Thank you for being active and engaged and informed.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Senator Cory Booker, how pleased we are to have him. Welcome again, and goodbye from Straight Talk. And as I always say, do the right thing.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
I'll see you again. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.